They laughed when I was covered in baby vomit and called me the family clown. But I knew something they didn't who really controlled their comfortable lives. At 62, while cradling my granddaughter in my weathered arms, she threw up across my work shirt. I smiled, wiping her tiny mouth with gentle fingers. My wife stepped into the nursery and declared that babies instinctively recognize trash when they encounter it. My daughter snickered, adding that children learn quickly. My son-in-law raised his smartphone, capturing the moment, and announced he'd found our family's court jester. I offered no response, simply rocking little Emma until sleep claimed her innocent face. This morning, my phone buzzed with 17 increasingly frantic calls from my wife, each message begging me to reverse what I had set in motion. 3 decades of experience taught me that dignity, once surrendered, becomes nearly impossible to reclaim. What happened next would revolutionize everything I believed about family, respect, and the true price of unconditional love. Let me tell you about the day I stopped being the family doormat and became the man I should have been all along. My name is Robert, and if you've lived long enough to understand that respect isn't automatically granted with age, you'll recognize the weight of what I'm about to share. At 62, I'm not claiming perfection. Never have, never will. 4 decades ago, I abandoned my college dreams to launch a plumbing business with nothing but callous determination and a second-hand toolbox. Today, my hands bear the permanent stains of honest work. My spine carries the accumulated burden of crawling through countless basements. And yes, my midsection has expanded with the years. But from that foundation of sweat and persistence, I constructed something meaningful from absolute nothing, providing comfort and security for those I cherished most, never once voicing complaints about the 70-hour weeks that funded their aspirations and luxuries. My wife Catherine wasn't always this way. When we exchanged vows 38 years ago, she radiated pride in my accomplishments, her eyes shining with genuine admiration when I solved impossible problems or landed significant contracts. Somewhere around our 20th anniversary, that admiration curdled into something unrecognizable. Perhaps it began when her university roommate ascended to executive status, while her husband still arrived home with grease embedded beneath his fingernails. Maybe it crystallized when her younger sister married a prestigious surgeon, their suburban mansion becoming the backdrop for elaborate dinner parties we could never reciprocate with equal sophistication. The transformation started subtly, microscopic paper cuts to my self-worth disguised as playful observation. "Oh, Robert, tracking mud again. Such a typical tradesman," she'd tease with a laugh that carried just enough edge to draw blood. Initially, I dismissed these moments as harmless marital banter, the kind of good-natured ribbing that seasoned couples exchange. But like water wearing away stone, her comments gradually eroded something fundamental within me, each small cruelty carving deeper channels for the next wave of humiliation. 3 years ago, our daughter Elizabeth and her husband Christopher found themselves struggling against an unforgiving housing market. I owned a rental property, a solid investment that generated substantial monthly income, but when family needs arise, financial calculations become secondary considerations. Without hesitation, I offered them residence at $1,500 monthly, less than half the property's market value of $3,200. Christopher works in cybersecurity, something involving network protocols and digital forensics that he explains with passionate enthusiasm while my comprehension falters. Elizabeth manages marketing campaigns for a boutique consulting firm. Both earn respectable salaries yet perpetually claim financial hardship, as if poverty were a fashionable accessory, rather than a genuine struggle. For 3 consecutive years, I've subsidized their comfortable lifestyle while they treated my generosity as an entitlement rather than a blessing. Beyond the discounted rent, I've personally handled every maintenance issue, from replacing faulty water heaters to rewiring electrical panels, saving them thousands in professional service fees. I've covered their streaming entertainment subscriptions because they casually mentioned using our family accounts. Their automobile insurance was quietly added to our policy during what they termed a temporary financial adjustment that stretched into its 4th year. Most significantly, I provided unlimited childcare for Emma, their 8-month-old daughter, multiple evenings each week without compensation, payment, or even consistent gratitude. What have I received in exchange for this unprecedented generosity? An education in the precise art of calculated disrespect. Last Christmas, while the family gathered around our dining table laden with food I'd purchased and Catherine had prepared, Christopher asked if I understood how to operate a smartphone, his voice carrying that particular tone reserved for addressing intellectually challenged children. I've owned the same Samsung device for 5 years and manage every aspect of my business through its applications, scheduling appointments, processing payments, maintaining client communications. When I mentioned this professional competency, he responded with exaggerated amazement, declaring it impressive for someone who still writes paper checks at grocery stores. The entire table erupted in laughter. I did not join them. Catherine has perfected the art of public humiliation disguised as loving concern. During restaurant dinners, she makes theatrical observations about my unfamiliarity with proper utensil etiquette, as if my working-class upbringing were a character flaw requiring constant correction. We grew up with financial constraints that made fancy dining an impossible luxury, so forgive my ignorance regarding the nuanced hierarchy of silverware placement. Last month, at a family barbecue hosted by her sister, I overheard Catherine explaining to relatives that I represented the perfect cautionary tale of what happens when someone peaks during high school athletics. I had earned varsity letters in both football and wrestling, achievements that once filled her with pride. Apparently, those accomplishments now serve as evidence of my intellectual limitations. Elizabeth has begun emulating her mother's cruelty with disturbing precision. Last week, when I crawled beneath their malfunctioning dishwasher to diagnose a drainage problem, saving them a $175 service call, she entertained Emma with a running commentary about the importance of education. "This is exactly why we want you to attend college, sweetheart, so you won't spend your 60s crawling around on kitchen floors like your grandfather." I continued working in silence, my face pressed against cold linoleum, absorbing this casual assassination of my character while ensuring their convenience remained uninterrupted. 2 days ago, everything changed. Everything. I was babysitting Emma while the three adults attended some wine tasting event in the affluent part of town, another expense they claimed they couldn't afford while expecting me to provide free childcare. I treasure every moment with that precious child. She represents the only person in that household whose face illuminates with pure joy upon seeing me. After feeding her the evening bottle, I held her against my chest, rocking slowly while sharing quiet observations about the world she would inherit, the dreams I harbored for her future, the unconditional love that would forever shelter her from life's inevitable storms. Emma became fussy, as babies do, and then deposited the contents of her tiny stomach across my shirt. Completely normal infant behavior. I smiled at her cherubic face, reassuring her with gentle words while beginning the familiar cleaning routine. That's when they returned early from their sophisticated evening, wine-flushed and boisterous. Instead of offering assistance or showing concern for Emma's welfare, Catherine surveyed the scene and pronounced her verdict with cold precision. "That baby instinctively recognizes what garbage smells like." Those exact words, delivered with surgical cruelty. Elizabeth snorted her approval, adding, "She learns remarkably fast." Christopher raised his smartphone, capturing our vulnerable moment for posterity, and declared, "That's our family clown right there." I said nothing, absolutely nothing. I simply continued cleaning Emma and myself, rocked her until peaceful sleep claimed her innocent features, placed her gently in her crib, and drove home through empty streets while their laughter echoed in my memory. Catherine arrived an hour later, already launching into complaints about some trivial annoyance from their evening, completely oblivious to the devastation she had authored. That night, sleep remained elusive as I replayed the scene endlessly, their faces twisted with amusement, their voices dripping with contempt, their casual destruction of whatever remained of my dignity. The baby recognizes what garbage smells like. 38 years of marriage, one daughter, one granddaughter I adore beyond measure, and this is their assessment of my worth. The family garbage, the family clown. But here's what my accomplished, educated, sophisticated family failed to understand about good old stupid Robert. While I might struggle with fancy restaurant etiquette, I possess an intimate understanding of financial mechanics. I know precisely who funds every comfort in their lives. I know about Christopher's gambling addiction that he believes remains secret. His private browsing habits mean nothing when I monitor our home network logs. I know about Catherine's hidden credit card, nearly maxed at $47,000. I know exactly how financially dependent they've all become on their supposed intellectual inferior. Yesterday morning, while Catherine attended her yoga class, I made a series of phone calls. Important calls. Long, overdue calls. By the time I finished those conversations, I felt a profound sense of calm settle over me for the first time in years. I retreated to my garage workshop, opened a cold beer, and waited for the inevitable storm. This morning, my phone began ringing at 6:37. Catherine, then Elizabeth, then Christopher, then Catherine again. 17 calls total while I sat peacefully on my back deck, watching the sunrise paint the sky in brilliant orange and gold, sipping coffee and listening to their increasingly desperate voicemails without returning a single call. You spend decades serving as someone's emotional punching bag, and they forget you can stand up anytime you choose. They're about to remember. What I actually did wasn't about revenge, it was about reality. For years, I've functioned as the family bank, my income flowing like a river toward people who apparently consider me less valuable than the dirt beneath their manicured fingernails. I had been planning retirement in 3 years, but that required their cooperation and gratitude. After the garbage incident, I decided my retirement from being their personal ATM was beginning immediately. Remember Christopher's gambling problem? It's catastrophically worse than I initially revealed. That man has destroyed nearly $85,000 over the past 2 years through sports betting applications and online poker sites. He believes his browsing privacy settings provide protection, but router logs don't lie, and neither do the collection notices I've observed in their mail when visiting to handle repairs. Elizabeth remains completely unaware that Christopher intercepts their correspondence to hide the mounting financial devastation. As for Catherine, my beloved wife of 38 years, her shopping addiction has spawned 3 secret credit cards totaling $51,000 in debt. I discovered this when a statement was mistakenly delivered to our address instead of her sister's home, where she has them sent to maintain her deception. Designer handbags, jewelry, clothing, all purchased while lecturing me about budgeting when I need new work boots. My plan wasn't vindictive. It was simply educational. First call, my attorney. We scheduled an immediate consultation to discuss asset protection strategies and potential separation procedures. Second call, the property management company. Effective immediately, Elizabeth and Christopher's rental rate would adjust to current market value, $3,200 monthly instead of $1,500. Formal notice would be delivered within 48 hours. Third call, my bank. I initiated the process of separating our accounts and securing my retirement savings in protected instruments. Fourth call, insurance company. Christopher and Elizabeth's vehicles were removed from our policy effective end of business. Fifth call, my accountant. We discussed restructuring my business to shield my assets from potential claims. By noon, the framework was established. I wasn't being malicious, I was simply stopping the endless flow of my resources toward people who viewed me as refuse. Stopping the financial support of individuals who found entertainment in my humiliation. Then I returned home and waited. Catherine came back from yoga around 1 o'clock, initially behaving normally while complaining about some woman wearing inappropriate attire during class. I sat at our kitchen table, scrolling through my phone, offering minimal responses to her chatter. Then her phone chimed with an email notification. My attorney had sent confirmation of our appointment to discuss financial restructuring and potential asset separation. Her face transformed from irritated to ashen within seconds. The questioning began immediately. Was I having an affair? Had I suffered some kind of mental breakdown? I provided clear, calm responses. No, I wasn't cheating. No, I hadn't lost my mind. In fact, I'd finally found it. She pivoted tactics instantly, transforming from angry to artificially sweet. Suddenly, I became honey and sweetheart instead of the family garbage. I continued eating my sandwich without acknowledging the performance. Around 3 o'clock, my phone exploded with text messages from Elizabeth. The property management company had contacted them about the rent increase notice scheduled for delivery. She demanded to know if this was some administrative error. I responded with a single word. No. 10 minutes later, Christopher was calling repeatedly. I allowed each call to reach voicemail, listening later to 4 increasingly desperate messages. In the final recording, his voice actually cracked when he pleaded for time to figure things out. By dinner, Catherine was in complete panic mode. She had discovered that I'd moved most of our money into protected accounts, leaving only enough to cover basic household expenses. Tears began flowing as she claimed not to understand what had possessed me. I reminded her about the garbage comment. She attempted to minimize it as harmless humor, suggesting I was being overly sensitive. That's when I presented her with printed statements from her secret credit cards. The expression on her face resembled someone witnessing their own ghost. She collapsed into a kitchen chair, mouth opening and closing soundlessly. For once in our marriage, Catherine was completely speechless. I slept in the guest room that night, not because she requested it, but because I couldn't tolerate being near her. My phone continued buzzing with notifications. I placed it on silent mode. The next morning, I met with my attorney for 2 hours, reviewing options. Not necessarily divorce, but certainly protection. He advised documenting everything, which I had already begun. Every cruel comment, every financial deception, all carefully preserved. When I returned home, Elizabeth was sitting in our driveway. Emma was visible in her car seat, a manipulative touch, using my granddaughter as an emotional prop. I nearly surrendered when I saw that innocent face, but then I remembered them laughing while I stood covered in baby vomit, holding their child. Elizabeth attempted tears first. When that proved ineffective, she shifted to anger. How could I destroy their lives like this? They'd never afford next month's rent at the increased rate. They'd be forced to move. Did I want my granddaughter living in some dangerous neighborhood because her grandfather was experiencing a midlife crisis? I looked directly into her eyes and asked if she knew about Christopher's gambling problem. The way her face changed revealed everything. She was completely ignorant of the financial catastrophe her husband had created. I suggested she inquire about the $85,000 before worrying about next month's rent. She departed in tears, but not before I kissed Emma goodbye. That moment was genuinely difficult. By week's end, the situation had escalated dramatically. Christopher appeared at my worksite, creating a public disturbance. He alternated between pathetic begging and explicit threats, claiming he'd ensure I never saw Emma again if I didn't reverse course. I recorded the entire confrontation on my phone for legal protection. Catherine moved in with her sister temporarily after I refused to compromise on the financial changes. Before leaving, she attempted one final manipulation, asking if 38 years of marriage meant nothing to me. I posed the same question to her. 2 weeks have passed since then. All formal notices have been delivered. My attorney has drafted comprehensive legal documents protecting my assets. The property management company confirms that Elizabeth and Christopher haven't paid the adjusted rent amount. Last night, while sitting on my deck enjoying a beer in peaceful solitude, a notification appeared on my phone. Christopher had tagged me in a social media post, that photograph of me covered in baby vomit, accompanied by a lengthy rant about ungrateful baby boomer parents who abandoned their families. It received 0 likes and 3 comments advising him to delete it. This morning brought a text from Elizabeth. We need to talk. I'm meeting her for coffee tomorrow, without Christopher. She claims to have discovered something on their shared computer that I need to see. I don't know what revelation awaits, but one thing has become crystal clear. The old dynamic is permanently dead. For the first time in decades, I'm not a doormat. I'm not garbage. I'm not a clown. I'm simply a man who finally decided his dignity was worth defending. At this stage in life, you learn that sometimes the most powerful action isn't fighting back. It's simply stepping away and allowing people to face the consequences of their choices while you watch from a comfortable distance with a cold beer and a fully funded retirement account they can no longer touch. Something profound happens when you finally stop caring about others' opinions of your worth. It's like discovering a superpower you never knew existed. For 62 years, I worried about being liked, about being accepted, about maintaining peace at any cost. Now I sleep with the profound tranquility that only comes from authentic self-respect. That coffee meeting with Elizabeth revealed everything I suspected and worse. Christopher's gambling debts weren't $85,000, they were $137,000. He had taken loans against their car, maxed out 9 credit cards, and most devastatingly, had been stealing from Emma's college fund that her great-grandparents had established. But the financial devastation was only the beginning. Elizabeth showed me emails to someone named Sophia, spanning 22 months. Graphic, detailed hotel receipts. Photographs I wish I could erase from memory. The ultimate insult. Christopher had been using my home Wi-Fi network to conduct this affair, sending these messages from my house while I fixed their appliances or provided free childcare. Elizabeth wasn't crying. She had moved beyond tears into a realm of cold, calculated fury. She asked if she and Emma could stay with me temporarily. I agreed, with one absolute condition. This wouldn't become another situation where Daddy fixes everything. She would contribute financially and help maintain the household. What I didn't tell her was the extent of my other actions. Remember those calls I mentioned? Beyond meeting with my attorney and moving assets, I had made additional strategic communications. I contacted Christopher's parents, his supervisor, and the organizer of his Thursday poker group. I shared everything, with documentation. His parents were horrified by their son's behavior. His boss expressed concerns about judgment issues affecting his security clearance. The poker group expelled him immediately. I also compiled every nasty text, email, and recorded comment my family had made about me over the years. Screenshots, audio files, detailed documentation. I organized everything into a comprehensive digital folder and sent it to Catherine's sister, her parents, and her closest friends, with a simple accompanying message. This is how my family has treated me for years. Now, I'm done. The responses arrived within hours. Catherine's sister called her behavior disgusting. Her mother expressed shame and disappointment. Her best friend since college said she didn't recognize the person in those messages. By week's end, Catherine had nowhere to go. Her sister refused further accommodation. She called me 19 times, each voicemail more desperate than the last. Good. Meanwhile, Christopher was experiencing his own spectacular collapse. His friend Marcus kicked him out after 3 days when Christopher couldn't contribute to household expenses. No family willing to help, no friends remaining, credit destroyed, accounts empty. He appeared at my house at midnight, obviously intoxicated, pounding on the door and screaming about seeing his daughter. I didn't open the door. I simply activated my new security system, recorded everything through the doorbell camera, and called police. They discovered cocaine in his vehicle. Not my problem. Elizabeth filed for emergency custody the following day. 2 weeks later, Catherine cornered me at the grocery store, following me through the produce section like a desperate stalker, begging for 5 minutes to explain herself. I retrieved my phone, started recording, and told her to proceed. She broke down completely, right there between the apples and organic zucchini, offering all the predictable responses. She was sorry. She had been horrible. She didn't understand her own behavior. She would change. The usual desperate promises. I simply asked if she remembered calling me garbage in front of our granddaughter. Asked if she remembered laughing while Christopher captured that photograph. Asked if she remembered 38 years of incremental cruelty. Then I walked away with my groceries, leaving her sobbing among the vegetables. 3 different customers recorded the scene on their phones. It appeared on local social media by dinner time. Was it petty? Absolutely. Did it feel magnificent? You bet it did. 1 month in, and the real consequences began manifesting. The property management company initiated eviction proceedings when Elizabeth and Christopher missed their second rent payment. Their credit scores plummeted. Christopher couldn't get approved for a studio apartment in the worst section of town. Catherine discovered that surviving on her actual income presented unexpected challenges. Her expensive yoga studio membership canceled, her weekly salon appointments eliminated, her luxury SUV repossessed. She was forced to find a roommate at 57 and started working overtime shifts to make ends meet. For the first time in their adult lives, they were experiencing reality without Robert's financial safety net. Elizabeth was the only one demonstrating genuine growth. She secured a second job, began therapy sessions, filed for divorce, and destroyed her credit cards. When she attempted to thank me for allowing her to stay, I reminded her this wasn't charity. She was paying reasonable rent and contributing to household maintenance. No more freeloading. 3 months after the incident, I agreed to meet with all of them together. My house, my terms. They arrived looking like shadows of their former selves. Catherine had gained weight and stopped coloring her hair. Christopher had lost at least 25 pounds and couldn't stop fidgeting nervously. Elizabeth stood physically apart from both of them. I presented my terms with absolute clarity. I would consider helping Elizabeth and Emma get back on their feet, but only with a formal repayment plan for any assistance provided. Christopher would need to complete gambling addiction treatment, maintain steady employment, and pay consistent child support before having any unsupervised visits with Emma. Catherine and I would remain separated indefinitely. Any potential reconciliation would require intensive couples therapy, a postnuptial agreement, and completely separate finances. Most importantly, no one, absolutely no one, would ever disrespect me again. One strike, and they're permanently removed from my life. There were tears, arguments, desperate pleading, but ultimately they all agreed. Not because they wanted to, but because they had no other choice. 6 months have passed since that transformative day. Where are we now? Elizabeth and Emma moved into a modest apartment last month. She's managing independently with minimal assistance from me, occasional babysitting, and a small loan that she's actually repaying on schedule with interest. Christopher completed 30 days of inpatient treatment and found employment delivering packages. He sees Emma twice weekly under supervision. He still looks at me like I might destroy his existence with a single phone call. Perfect. Catherine and I have attended exactly 8 counseling sessions. Progress remains slow and uncertain. We're not living together. I'm honestly not sure we ever will again. The therapist says I harbor unresolved anger. No kidding. Yesterday marked Emma's first birthday. We held a small celebration at Elizabeth's new apartment, everyone on their absolute best behavior. No sarcastic comments, no eye-rolling, just awkward politeness and genuine love for that precious child. At one point, I was holding Emma when she threw up on my shirt again. The room fell completely silent. Everyone froze, eyes darting between me and the baby, waiting for some kind of explosion. I smiled at her, told her it was perfectly okay, and began cleaning us both up. No one said a word. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. That's when I looked up at all of them, my family who had treated me like refuse for years, and asked, "Anyone want to make a comment about this? Anyone at all?" They all studied the floor intensely. Christopher literally backed away. Catherine busied herself with napkins. Elizabeth shook her head quickly. That's when I knew I had won. Completely and totally. Is this story finished? Not even close. Families are infinitely complicated, and healing takes time. But the old dynamic is dead forever. Buried. Gone. My family now understands a fundamental truth. I am not to be taken for granted. I am not an ATM. I am not a joke. Sometimes the most effective revenge isn't some elaborate scheme requiring months of planning. Sometimes it's simply allowing people to face the natural consequences of their actions while you observe from a comfortable distance with a cold beer and a retirement account they can never touch. With the wisdom that only comes from lived experience, I've learned that dignity isn't something others can take from you. It's something you surrender. And once you stop surrendering it, everything changes. The baby still throws up on me occasionally. The difference is, now I smile because I want to, not because I'm afraid of what they'll say if I don't. That, my friends, is what freedom feels like.